As Matt mentioned, I'm still Joel, and today I'm continuing the Vision series. Since I was a child, I've been getting into trouble for taking off my socks and leaving them various locations in the house, in other people's houses. Rightly so, getting in trouble for it. But basically for me, I'm not a big fan of socks and shoes. And so I like to take them off. I like to be barefoot. And for me, it means I'm comfortable. It means I feel like I'm at home. For those of you who don't know, my dad is also a reverend. He's retired now, but he was a reverend, and we went to the church that he was the reverend of. And I've always felt like I've grown up in church. The church has been part of my life. And for pretty much my entire life, and that the church, the building and the people have been an extended part of my home and my family. So when I was a teenager, I remember wandering through church at one point with, I can't remember why I didn't have shoes or socks on, but I felt comfortable, I was at home. And there's this little old row of lovely ladies who sat there every week. And one of them piped up, "Why aren't you wearing shoes? Why are you wearing socks?" And just as quickly, one of the other one piped up, "Don't tell him off. He's in his father's house." And that comment stuck with me, because one way or another, she was right. Church had always been an extension of my house, and the church has always been an extension of my family. But when I left home and when I moved churches, I discovered that not every church had the same welcome, and not every church felt like home or family. But the vision for this place, for these people, is that anyone who encounters us, wherever they should be, should feel comfortable, should feel welcomed, should feel home. So I'm going to talk about the idea of why and how we do that. So why? Have you ever been somewhere where you feel just completely unwelcome? It's just a horrible feeling within you. And it's a feeling you would likely get if you ever visited Queimada Grande in Brazil. It's a little island, and there is between 1 and 5 snakes for every square metre on the island. And what makes it worse is that they are deadly, some of the most deadly snakes in the world. Essentially, that island is completely abandoned by humans, and for good reason, because it's full of deadly snakes. It's the opposite of the feeling of what we're aiming for here at St. Mark's. I hope that however you've ended up here today, that you've felt welcome here so far. Whether you've been told about St. Mark's and you've heard good things, or maybe you've appreciated the smile on the face of the people welcoming you in, or the very literal signs that say, "It's great to see you, come on in." Maybe you've been before and you've noticed that people seem genuinely interested in you. Maybe it's just a free coffee. Those are just a few things, but they're all part of a bigger picture, because welcoming people home is not just a priority for us as a church or for Christians worldwide. It's actually something that Jesus talked about, that Jesus prioritized. The story of the prodigal son is in the book of Luke. A lot of people have heard of it before, and we'll look at it in a bit. But what's really important to note is the reason why Jesus tells that story. Luke 15, 1-2 says, This time a lot of men and women of questionable reputation were hanging around Jesus, listening intently. The Pharisees and the religion scholars were not pleased at all. They growled. He takes sinners and eats with them, treating them like old friends. The religious people of that time were grumbling. They were unhappy with the people that Jesus was welcoming, the people that Jesus ate with. the people that Jesus spent time with. And that is the launch point for the story of the prodigal son. So in Luke 15:11-32, Jesus paints this picture of a man who breaks all cultural, historical, and contextual rules. He asks for inheritance before his dad has died. He wastes it all, living in a way that is seen as unacceptable, and he ends up sharing dinner with pigs. Now, in 2022, the idea of asking for money, partying, and eating pig's food is just a task on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. But for the audience listening at the time, they would have been in shock. They would have been in disgust at the behaviour. In telling this story, Jesus is trying to make everyone understand what God is like. And to do this, he exaggerates the wrongs of the prodigal son, painting a picture of someone who would likely have been stoned to death or exiled from the community. And he did this to make it quite clear what God is like. And we see what God is like in the response from the father. While he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. And the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." The father is out waiting for his child to return. And when he sees him, he runs to embrace him. Now, again, running today is fairly common for masochists and people who've missed the bus, but at the time that the story was told, running was a very undignified thing to do. To run, the father would have had to hitch up his robes. It would have been awkward. And in society, it would have been viewed as embarrassing. In running, he would have been looked down upon. He doesn't wait when he gets there to hear his son's opinion or what he's got to say. He embraces him. He kisses him. He reinstates him as part of the family. And he throws a massive party. He welcomes him home. Part of the vision for this church is for people to experience the love of God, and the story of the prodigal son is a perfect example of why home is one of our values. Because this story says to us and to you, no matter who you are, whatever it is you've done, however low your own self-opinion, God says, welcome home. And so, we try and embody that here in every way. We want to welcome you home. We want you to feel part of the family. We want you to be comfortable enough that it isn't just a value or a theory, but a feeling. So, how do we do this? There's a story in Luke, again in Luke 5:17-26. And it goes like this. Some men came carrying a paralysed man on a mat and tried to take him in the house to lay him before Jesus. When they could not find a way to do this because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and lowered him on the mat through the tiles into the middle of the crowd, right in front of Jesus. Jesus goes on to heal this man, and the man picks up his mat and walks out. He encounters Jesus, and the entire trajectory of his life is changed. But to get there, to get to this point where he's met Jesus and his life is changed, there are two outstanding actions. Firstly, let's think for a minute about that poor homeowner. He invites Jesus round for a cuppa, And the next thing he knows, some blokes have made a massive whopping great hole in his roof and lowered someone down to the floor. It's a deeply disruptive action to the homeowner. But the result of it is that the man meets Jesus. If we truly want to welcome people home, we have to accept that they may get proverbial or literal mud on our carpets. Think back to the prodigal son, the extent to which the father put up with the disruption in order to welcome his son home. He gave up his societal position, his wealth, his friendship, his power, his dignity, all laid aside, all disrupted, in order to embrace his child. God wants us to know the extent to which he loves us. And from that, he wants us to live lives that are willing to embrace the disruption so that others may know God's love. And secondly, we have the paralysed man's friends. They know where Jesus is, and they band together to carry their friend to the house. When they encounter the crowd, they don't give up, but they persist. They climb up onto the roof. They make a hole in the roof in which to lower him down. And then they literally do lower him down somehow onto the floor in front of Jesus. These friends put an incredible physical shift in for their friend to encounter Jesus. They go above and beyond, stopping at nothing to help put that man before Jesus. And that is what the value of home is all about. Do we carry the burdens of our friends? Do we stop at nothing to introduce them to Jesus? And it's not about bringing them into the building or to Alpha, and those things are great, absolutely. They are great, and you should do both of those things. But it's not just about that. Because within us is the presence of the living God, not restricted by walls or services. We go from here empowered by God's Holy Spirit. We are able to have faith when all seems lost. We are able to have hope where there is none. And we can love, not expecting it to be returned or even deserved. If we want to help carry our friends to Jesus, then the actions and words and thoughts we have must mimic the man we want people to meet. I'm going to close with my story. So obviously I did grow up in church, but didn't always take the most straightforward path. We moved house when I was going into year 5, no idea what age that was, but I just remember hating it massively in almost every way. I hated having to move house, I hated being in a new school, I hated being in a new place, all of it. I turned inwards on myself and I felt incredibly alone. But I had a group of friends from church who, to be honest, I don't know how we became friends. I think they just decided that I was their friend. And that group of friends has been consistent throughout all of my formational years. And no matter how far I wandered away from church, no matter where my faith waned to, they were always there. They were always faithful in following Jesus. And they always helped me feel welcome and home. When I was rereading this story of the paralysed man who was carried on a mat to the feet of Jesus, it reminded me of how many times they were willing to bear my burdens and to carry me back to the feet of Jesus. They were always willing. And that is the kind of culture we want to establish in this place. That is the legacy that we want to pass down, is be a people who have carried people in whatever condition they are into the presence of Jesus. We're going to close in prayer. Let's stand together now. We're going to pray.